In the annals of military history, few names inspire both terror and admiration like that of Hannibal Barca. The Carthaginian general, who dared to march elephants across the Alps, stands as history's most audacious strategic genius. His invasion of Italy would shake the Roman Republic to its foundations and forever change the balance of power in the ancient Mediterranean. This is the story of a man driven by an oath of vengeance, whose tactical brilliance nearly erased Rome from existence. Hannibal was born in 247 BC into Carthage's most powerful military dynasty. His father, Hannibal Barca, had earned the nickname Lightning for his swift victories against Roman forces in Sicily. The Barca family ruled not through birthright, but through military prowess and the loyalty of their armies. Young Hannibal grew up in the shadow of Carthage's humiliating defeat in the First Punic War, watching Roman ships dominate waters that had once belonged to his ancestors. At the age of 9, Hannibal's destiny was sealed in a moment that would echo through history. Before departing for Spain to rebuild Carthaginian power, Hamilcar brought his son to the Temple of Melqart. There, with his small hand placed upon the sacred altar, Hannibal swore an oath that would define his entire existence: eternal hatred of Rome. The boy who made this vow would spend his life fulfilling it, turning personal vendetta into a campaign that nearly destroyed the greatest empire the world had ever known. Hamilcar died when Hannibal was 18, drowning while campaigning in Spain. Command passed briefly to Hasdrubal the Fair, who expanded Carthaginian territories through diplomacy and strategic marriages. But when Hasdrubal was assassinated in 221 BC, the army unanimously chose 26-year-old Hannibal as their commander. He had learned warfare from childhood, studying Roman tactics, mastering multiple languages, and earning the fierce devotion of soldiers who saw in him the embodiment of Carthaginian pride. Hannibal's personal life reflected his singular focus on his mission against Rome. He married Emilce, a Spanish noblewoman, cementing alliances crucial to his campaign. Yet, unlike other ancient commanders who surrounded themselves with luxury, Hannibal lived among his soldiers, sharing their hardships and dangers. His officers described a man of extraordinary physical courage and intellectual calculation, equally comfortable planning grand strategy and fighting in the front ranks. His ability to command loyalty across diverse cultures would prove essential to his audacious plan. The spark that ignited the Second Punic War came in 219 BC when Hannibal besieged Saguntum, a Spanish city allied with Rome. The 8-month siege became a test of wills between two civilizations. As Roman envoys demanded Hannibal's surrender, he demonstrated his resolve by personally leading assaults against the city walls. When Saguntum fell, Rome declared war, expecting to fight another conventional conflict in Spain and Africa. They had no conception of the catastrophe approaching from an impossible direction. In the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal began his legendary march with an army of 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. His route took him across the Pyrenees, through hostile Gallic tribes, and along the Mediterranean coast toward the Alps. Roman strategy assumed any Carthaginian attack would come by sea, leaving Italy's northern approaches virtually undefended. Hannibal's intelligence network had identified this weakness, and his entire campaign hinged on achieving complete strategic surprise. The Alpine crossing remains one of history's most extraordinary military achievements. For 15 days, Hannibal's army climbed treacherous mountain paths, battling not only the brutal autumn weather but also fierce Celtic tribes who rolled boulders down upon the struggling column. The elephants, symbols of Carthaginian power, suffered terribly in the freezing conditions. Hannibal himself lost sight in one eye to frostbite and infection. When rock slides blocked their path, soldiers heated the stones with fires and split them with vinegar, carving passages through solid rock. When Hannibal's surviving forces descended into the Po Valley, they numbered fewer than half their original strength. Yet, the psychological impact of their arrival was immeasurable. Roman colonies that had considered themselves invulnerable suddenly faced Carthaginian cavalry ranging across their territories. Gallic tribes, long suppressed by Roman expansion, flocked to join the invader who had accomplished the impossible. Within weeks, Hannibal's army had grown to 60,000 men, fed by recruits eager to strike at their common enemy. At the Trebia River in December 218 BC, Hannibal demonstrated the tactical genius that would define his Italian campaigns. Luring the Romans into a dawn attack across an icy river, he concealed 2,000 picked troops in dense vegetation along the riverbank. As the Roman legions engaged his center, These hidden forces struck their rear, while Carthaginian cavalry swept around their flanks. The slaughter was complete. 16,000 Romans died in a single morning, their bodies carpeting the frozen ground. The following spring brought Hannibal's most brilliant victory at Lake Trasimene. Roman consul Gaius Flaminius, desperate to redeem his nation's honor, pursued the Carthaginians into a narrow valley shrouded by morning mist. Hannibal had positioned his troops on the surrounding hills, invisible in the fog. As the Roman column stretched along the lake shore, Carthaginian war cries erupted from all sides. Trapped between the water and their enemies, 15,000 Romans perished, including Flaminius himself, whose head was never found among the carnage. Rome's darkest hour came at Cannae on August 2, 216 BC. Facing the largest army Rome had ever assembled, Hannibal employed a tactical masterpiece that military academies study to this day. He placed his weakest troops in the center, allowing them to retreat gradually while his elite African infantry held the flanks. As the Romans pressed forward, believing victory was within reach, the Carthaginian flanks closed inward like the jaws of a trap. 50,000 Romans died in a few hours, including both consuls and most of the Senate's military leadership. In the aftermath of Cannae, Hannibal stood at the gates of history. His officers urged an immediate march on Rome itself, arguing that the city lay defenseless. But Hannibal recognized that storming Rome without siege equipment would waste his irreplaceable veteran army. Instead, he sought to fracture Roman alliances, waiting for Italian cities to abandon their overlords. This decision, perhaps his only strategic miscalculation, allowed Rome time to recover and adapt their tactics to match his genius. For 13 years, Hannibal campaigned in Italy, never losing a major battle, yet unable to achieve decisive victory. Rome adopted the strategy of Quintus Fabius Maximus, avoiding pitched battles while gradually wearing down Carthaginian strength. As Roman armies learned from their defeats, they began to match Hannibal's tactical innovations. Meanwhile, Roman forces under Scipio Africanus conquered Carthaginian Spain, cutting off reinforcements. The end came at Zama in 202 BC, when Hannibal returned to defend Carthage itself. Facing Scipio on the plains of North Africa, he found himself outmaneuvered by a student who had mastered his own tactical methods. The war elephants that had once terrorized Roman legions were turned back against their own forces. Carthaginian cavalry, the arm that had dominated every Italian battlefield, was overwhelmed by Roman horsemen and Numidian allies. For the first time in his career, Hannibal suffered decisive defeat. After Zama, Hannibal attempted to rebuild Carthage as a civilian leader, implementing reforms that restored the city's commercial prosperity. But Roman suspicion never ceased, and in 195 BC, he fled into exile rather than face extradition. For 20 years, he served various enemies of Rome, from Antiochus of Syria to Prusius of Bithynia, always seeking one final opportunity to fulfill his childhood oath. In 183 BC, surrounded by Roman demands for his surrender, Hannibal chose death by poison rather than capitulation to his lifelong enemies. Hannibal's legacy transcends his ultimate failure to destroy Rome. His tactical innovations revolutionized warfare, introducing concepts of maneuver and deception that remain fundamental to military strategy. The double envelopment at Cannae became the template for decisive battle, studied by commanders from Napoleon to modern staff colleges. More profoundly, his invasion forced Rome to evolve from a regional power into a global empire, accelerating the conquest that would reshape the ancient world. Perhaps Hannibal's greatest achievement was proving that even the mightiest empire could be vulnerable to imagination and audacity. His Alpine crossing demonstrated that natural barriers exist only in the minds of those who accept them as absolute. In an age when military campaigns followed predictable patterns, Hannibal showed that strategic surprise could overcome overwhelming odds. The boy who swore eternal hatred of Rome became the man who defined the very limits of human ambition and tactical genius. Today, Hannibal's name remains synonymous with military brilliance and implacable determination. His crossing of the Alps stands as humanity's ultimate expression of the will to achieve the impossible. Though he failed to destroy Rome, he succeeded in creating something far more enduring. A legend that inspires all who dare to challenge the established order. In the annals of history, few have come closer to bending the arc of civilization through sheer force of genius and unbreakable resolve.